Alright, I really didn't want to do this, but over the past 2 weeks, there had just been a cascade of serious issues with Gotway wheels. And we're not even talking about things that we have seen in the past, like bad bearings or even bore burnout, but we're talking about fire. I mean, this is the one thing that should strike fear into the heart of any electric unicycle riders. And of course, there's also the matter of the Demo Monster Pro, which I had rode in my review last week, and I had also seen it die right in front of my very own eyes. So this week, while you should be concerned if you are riding or thinking about buying a Gotway or Bigot wheel, what I'm personally preparing to do in order to stay safe, and what this all means for my favorite company that I also happen to love to hate. Are you ready for my burning Gotway rant? Roll the intro!
1 pill makes you larger, and 1 pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't.
As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and click on that bell icon to be notified of new episodes, and stay till the end for a preview of what's coming up next.
Don't do anything at all.
Now this is the ugly truth that none of us probably like to talk about, and this is especially painful for me to say because at this point my own wheels essentially feels like my own appendages. But to a certain degree, they're all potential fire hazards. First, they all carry lithium battery, which produce the worst kind of fires, the kind that you can't even put out with regular fire extinguishers. And with their increasingly large battery capacity, that also means that when they do burn, the very, very, very hot fire will burn for a very, very, very long time. And aside from the intense heat, lithium battery fire also produce toxic fluoride gas, another hazard if the fire were to take place in an enclosed space. And up until this point, battery fire had actually been relatively rare, and in the few instances when they had happened, it had usually been wheels that was being ridden, which means that they're usually outside and people are paying attention to them. And so that somewhat limited the amount of damage done. And inside of the last 3 weeks, we had 3 instances from different parts of the world where wheels that weren't even on went up in flame, which is the nightmare scenario that you never want happen. I'll walk you through each of the 3 instances as well as what I know about it, and I'll talk about what happened to the Demo Monster Pro that I wrote and speculate on what I think may have caused the problem, as well as what could have happened with some of the other Gotway wheels. And then there are the things in which I plan to do in order to help protect myself. And finally, what I think this means for the future of Gotway. First, we have an incident in Portland where a Gotway MSP that was left in a home and not even plugged in lit on fire on its own. It was a stock unmodified wheel, and thankfully the owner saw it in time and was able to somehow carry it while it was burning and throw it out into the parking lot. Thankfully, since otherwise things could have been a lot more worse. Second, we had a nearly brand new Monster Pro in Poland, which lit while it was off and in the back of a car while the owner was driving on the highway. Thankfully, again, he was able to pull over in time and toss it out of his car so as to limit the amount of damage. The wheel was bought without batteries, and stock Gotway batteries was added day 2. Third, and this one absolutely takes the cake. Part of a shipment of Gotway wheels for e-wheel burned en route inside of the container. These are all obviously brand new wheels still inside of their packaging. Now, the exact cause of all 3 of these incidents are still under investigation. However, in the past, wheel fires usually happens to electric unicycle that either have been damaged or modified after they had left the Gotway factory. So the fact that these brand new or nearly brand new wheels went up in flame is disturbing, to say the least. As to my own incident, thankfully, aside from the control board, none of the battery packs appears to have been affected, but as a precaution, we immediately pulled the control board and I left the monster out on my balcony ever since. Alright, here we have the poor charred remain of my Monster Pro. And I'd like to point out a few issues I noticed. Now, I have to preface this by saying that I'm no electrical engineer and can only base my thought on common sense and having seen, the internal design and engineering of a few other electric unicycles. And if you disagree, that's what the comment section below is for. First of all, Gotway control board had no fuses nor current limitation, and that means zero protection against the control board overheating when there's a current spike. And with a higher watt motor and more batteries, it's bound to happen more frequently unless safeguards were put in, like the dual power inlet on the veteran controller to split the current or fuses between the battery and the control board. There may be safeguards that I'm not aware of, but the fact that my board burned means that whatever Gotway did failed to contain this current spike. And what made it worse is how tightly packed the control board and all of its associated wiring is placed right next to the battery pack with basically no leeway whatsoever. Every other electric unicycle company keep their board in a separate compartment from the batteries. Some even encase their battery in their own casing to provide additional protection, neither of which Gotway does. The other thing I noticed is that there's an exhaust fan right here pumping air out of the battery compartment through an opening underneath the board right into the wheel well area, which is fine except there are no air intake, and as a result, to compensate for all those air being pumped out of the compartment, it is at the same time drawing air in through every single gaps, cracks, or openings, and none of those are weather sealed, and as a result, it's very possible that water could get into the battery compartment because of that. I also noticed from Eco Drift teardown of their Monster Pro that on their heat sink, which is again facing the wheel well, there isn't this splash guard, and as a result their exhaust opening is pretty much open. And again, since the wheel rotate against the direction of this intake, it's very possible that it would fling water right into that port, and since the fan is not on all the time, I can see water making its way past the fan, and in which case would drip right onto the control board. Let me remind you that water will react with lithium and cause the cell to combust if the metal jacket on the individual battery was compromised somehow, perhaps because of the heat coming from a burning control board. That, coupled with the histories of poor QCs we have seen from Gotway's wheels in the past, and sometimes things simply failed not because they weren't engineered properly, but just because that components weren't assembled properly. A poorly soldered connections here or loose plugs there. Now, all the way until quite recently, and despite my constant complaint about Gotway's poor QC, they have been relatively reliable when it comes to mission critical components. However, that seems to have changed within the last year or two, especially within the past few months, given the rapid succession of fire incidents that we're seeing. And mind you, this happened after they have gone on hold and delayed production due to the introduction of the Monster Pro, the EX, as well as the EXN. Last week, one of the local rider also had his wheel, a new Gotway RS, cut out at 20 miles per hour while he was riding the ring, and the wheel stopped working altogether after that. And it appears that water had gotten into the case and shorted a connection and overload and burned the controller as a result. Now, poor waterproofing is again nothing new with Gotway wheels, but given the number of weak links in their production chain, what I suspect the cause of their current predicament are the old problems compound on top of new problems to cause even bigger problems. What I have to emphasize again is the seriousness of the problems. I myself live in a high-rise building. That means that if one of my wheels were to catch fire, I wouldn't even have an easy way to get rid of it. And that in turn will not only endanger my own life as well as that of my family, but it will also risk the lives and the properties of my neighbors. I am contemplating maybe even getting a storage unit to keep any wheels I'm not currently riding, and I also ordered 2 bags of this Class D fire extinguisher since it's one of the few that I have found that satisfy a legit UL test designed around putting out fire caused by battery packs similar to ours. But let me be very clear that I personally do not find this to be an acceptable way of how things are. I mean, we have given Gotway plenty of leeway before on their 4 QCs, and now we're literally burned as a result of our faith in them. I do not recommend anyone to buy a Gotway wheel right now, or even in the near future. As Dove has said in his video, they had never paid attention to what their customer wants, and perhaps the only way to get their attention is if we all collectively stop buying their product. So they know that this is a serious problem for us. And I have to add that to me it really feels like Gotway had lost its way. They started out as a company that strived to push at the boundary of what is possible and release some of the most revolutionary electric unicycle ever sold, but ever since the original MSX, which was released in 2018, it is just being iterative of the same wheels with slightly modified components with equal if not worse performance than prior models. The Monster Pro, which was meant to show that Gotway is still capable of pushing the EUC tech further, turned out to be a little bit of a dud. As much as I think that wheel has great and amazing potentials, it also has an equally number of really huge problems that I don't see how they can overcome without fundamentally redesigning the whole thing. And honestly, I think that's exactly what Gotway should do if they still care about making great electric unicycles. But perhaps Gotway is dead. After all, they don't even call themselves that no more. I'm maybe the only person still holding out hope that they will come around and be the company that once built the wheels I love to ride so much. Now, in response to all these problems, Gotway had issued a formal letter stating that they are in the process of conducting an internal investigation to see if they can identify what was causing all of the problems. And in response to their response, I will say this: I don't really care anymore. The electric unicycle world had evolved, and we now have better wheels from companies that actually care about their products and customers. And if we're short one Gotway, we'll survive.
Before he reached the town, man telling things to the great big bin where the ducks and the geese were put therein. A couple of you will breathe my chin before I leave this town.
Oh man, look at the time. I somehow managed to waste another 15 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to know what you think, so let me know in the comment section below. And shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description if you enjoy and like to support my work. And as always, as much as we all love electric unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheel is to grow as a community. So tell your friends and teach them how to ride and get them hooked.
Quack, quack, quack.